Hello, beautiful people. Hello, wonderful, amazing souls who understand that we need a revolution of the mind. Thanks for being together. Thanks for getting together with me. This is great. This is awesome. You are the for the most part. There's a couple of exceptions. You know who you are, but for the most part, you are the aware, the awoke. A word I made up. I think. No, I awoke. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if you could be the awoke. You are the awoke. You're the aware. You're the brilliant. You're the ones who see through the bullshit, the screen, the guise of bullshit, the veil of bullshit, which is the worst material to make a veil out of. I mean, it's not going to last very long. It's going to run. It's going to get oozy, right? It's going to stick to things. You don't matter. It's a shitty veil. Literally shitty veil. Anyway, thank you for being here because you guys make it all worthwhile. Anyway, please share this. Please hit subscribe. All that good shit. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, noon Eastern. This is Moment of Clarity, except Fridays is for members only at leecamp.net. But let's get into it. Actually, I'll say this, and this isn't even one of the topics I'm hitting on. But I'm saying it anyway. I'm not fucking talking about the presidential election until it's time for a presidential election. I'll tell you that right now. Because I've said for years that we spend about 900% too much time talking about the presidency like it's all that matters, like it's all that can create change in this world when it never creates change in this world. So I've said for a long time that you should spend all of your time talking politics, talking issues, talking about the real shit, digging into it. Of the time you spend thinking about that, talking about that, devote 5% to federal electoral politics or less, but max 5%. Okay? All the rest of the time, devote to other things, other issues, other ways of creating change. Because that is the maximum amount of your brain ball that it should fucking use up, take up like it's a distraction. It's a vampire squid that just sucks the life out of any meaning and change in this world, meaningful change. So, in Britain, what do they spend something like 3 months of presidential campaigning. I think maybe 4 months if it's like a real clown, a real dope like Boris Johnson. They might up it to 4 months, but it's like 3 months, a few months. Maybe the real wonks, the nerds, get together 6 months before the election and talk about it. The real nerdy types, they're talking about 6 months ahead of time. In the United States, it's fucking 3 out of every 4 years talking about these garbage candidates. I'm not doing it. I'm not a part of it. So if you want me to be a part of it, then if you want to see that shit, then turn to some other channel, all right? Thanks for being here. I've already told some of you to leave. But anyway, let's get into everything. I actually titled this video "Different Things on Different Platforms." So some of you may be seeing the lead article as about Rockefeller and Bill Gates, how they're destroying Africa. We're going to get into that. It's been going on for years now. Some of you may see the main article, the title as inflation means corporate pillaging. We're going to get into that as well, and we're going to get into much more than that. So hang on to your galoshes. Anyway, like I mentioned at the beginning, Monday, Moment of Clarity live stream is now Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and usually Saturday at noon Eastern, except Friday. And that's all on rumble.com/LeeCamp. But Fridays is the members only at leecamp.net, which will forward you to my locals page. Anyway, let's get into it. So this is from, I haven't talked that much about inflation, about, Javier wants, this is interesting. Javier wants us to know that the news from Colombia, Gustavo Petro won. He's the new president. Assuming Javier's got his shit together and we can trust him. But anyway, I haven't talked that much about inflation. So Biden and inflation. This is from Counterpunch. Culture wars have real casualties, but for politicians, culture wars conveniently distract people from the economy. And this is so true. This is what they use that garbage to distract you from. They just not just the economy, but real issues of the way that the United States is destroying the planet, the way the capitalism is sucking the ever meaning life out, every last meaning out of life. They use these culture wars to cover that stuff up, and that doesn't mean there aren't occasionally important issues. Like, for example, the overturning of Roe v. Wade that's coming down the pike at the Supreme Court. That is a big issue, but at the same time, they're going to use it to cover up everything. They're going to use it to cover up any discussion of the fact that the planet's on fire. More on that later. Or the fact that half of America can't go outdoors. More on that later. They're going to use that issue, which is, yes, it's a small issue, but it's an important one. Small comparatively to us killing 6 million people over the past 20 years. With our war on terror, for example. But they're going to use it to cover up everything. Or, there's so many things. Or, the Republicans want to act like trans rights are a scourge on society. Trans rights are destroying your children because they asked to be called a different pronoun. Your little kid, his brain has been destroyed. It just melted out his ears. Because someone requested a different pronoun. Yeah, fuck you. That's an example of their culture war bullshit that they use to cover up everything. So this article is accurate that it's used, culture wars, all that crap is used to disguise things, disguise the reality of what's going on. And then the article continues there. The junk reactionaries and fascists vomit forth to conceal from their addled base the fact that in recent decades, rightists have enabled corporations to steal trillions of dollars from ordinary working people. But guess what? So-called liberal Dems do it too. And this article has this right. It's not just fucking right-wingers that are using this shit to allow and perpetrate the theft of the American working class, the American resources. It is both sides of the aisle because there is no fucking aisle. That's the thing. I don't know if you know this. They're all one party, the one corporate party. And recently in Congress, they actually took out the aisle. They actually went in. They got construction workers in, and they fucking chiseled it up, and they removed the aisle so that we can't even say two sides of the aisle anymore because they're one fucking party. It's one party. It's a corporate party. It's pillaging this planet, and there's no aisle. There's no meaningful aisle. So can we just send in some construction workers to remove the aisle? There's no aisle there. And he's right. The writer, I think it's a she actually. The right that the culture war garbage, could be, immigrants are gonna get us. They're taking our jobs. They're taking all our jobs. Because apparently your job was, immigrant farm labor, where they get completely underpaid and then have all their low wages stolen. Anyway. That kind of garbage, the culture war garbage, is vomited forth to a certain fan base of morons. And again, this can go for liberal Dems too, that eat this shit up and aren't able to have any nuance, aren't able to see that this is a portion of the reality of what we should be talking about. And they eat up that vomit. I don't know if that analogy works, but they just swallow that vomit, hook, line, and sinker to make this analogy, to make this metaphor even more completely dizzying. They just and so all these people, in comment threads on YouTube and everywhere else, you see all these people that are like, the Jews, the fucking The queers are getting us. Like all those sad little barbaric, simple-minded people that can't stop yelling Jew every 3 sentences. They're sad, simple-minded people, and they're eating this vomit and they swallow it, and then it infects their brains, which were walnut sized to begin with. So that's so it's funny because they think they're getting you, I called that guy a Jew, or I called that guy a queer, or whatever, or even worse words that I'm not gonna yell here on a podcast / live stream. They think they're getting you, but the truth is, saying that shit is just like a giant sign that's just like, I am simple brained. Honestly, it's like walking around with a big old helmet, just a hat that says across it, I'm very not bright. I'm aggressively not bright. That's so every time you see those, I mean, don't even talk to them if they're in the comment threads, in the fucking feeds, or whatever. Don't even acknowledge that they exist, because they're wearing a hat that says, I'm special, I'm simple brained, and I can't actually view reality as it stands. So I'm yelling dirty words. I'm yelling the words that upset people, because that's the only way I know to think. So anyway, this shit from the culture war gets vomited up, and then it ends up in these comment threads because people are like, Tucker Carlson sent me to call someone a queer. It's fucking pathetic shit. And so don't entertain it. Don't be a part of it. But anyway, this is getting to a deeper issue about inflation, which I might get to eventually. Both sides of the aisle, because there is no aisle. They removed the aisle. I don't know if you know that. They removed my aisle a few months ago. They use this culture war stuff to put up a smoke screen. I think that is actually a legit analogy, not it doesn't have any. They put up the smoke screen, hook, line, and sinker. All right. To continue from the article, this fall, Dems bank on the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So we know that's coming down the pike at Supreme Court. Supreme Court is a group of oligarchs that defend the oligarchy at all costs, and they are planning to overturn Roe v. Wade. We know that thanks to a leak that came out a month ago or so. And Dems know that's happening, and they are. This article's arguing they are banking on the They are counting on the overturning of Roe v. Wade, something they have done zero to stop. And that is an incredibly important point I've talked about before. The Dems could have codified Roe v. Wade, could have codified a woman's right to choose, could have codified it into the law many times over the past 40, 30 years, whenever. They could have made it law into the fucking Constitution that we all worship and bow down to and jack off to at the same time. They could have done that, but they didn't. And they didn't for a reason, because it is useful to them. It is useful to them to not have this be a law, to have this be something that, I mean, not I guess it is a law, but to not have it in the Constitution, have it be something that we can bicker over every 4 years. This article says, something they've done zero to stop over decades to electrify their base and keep them in their congressional offices. In short, Democrats and Biden hope their failure to protect women's rights will sidetrack voters' attention from the gigantic super duper menace of inflation. Recent months have seen gas prices in the $7 a gallon range in some places. If affordable electric cars had flooded the market along with the infrastructure for charging them, and if consumers had the spare cash to purchase one, or if the government had stepped in and made sure that people had easy accessibility to that, or easy accessibility to, how about, mind-blowing, electric public transportation. Brain shoots out eyes. If that stuff had been done, these astronomical gas prices would be great for the environment. This Arthur making a good point again, that these high gas prices could be good for the environment, make gas harder to get. But of course, because the United States has not just done nothing to switch to renewables, or nearly nothing, has not just not replaced all our cars with electrics, etc. Has not, and then you got to replace where that electricity is coming from to get away from coal and all that shit. We have not done that, and so therefore, yes, the higher gas prices may be a little nice for the environment, but it's fucking destroying people. It's destroying people's lives. It's making it impossible for them to get by. And so these things do not have to be mutually exclusive. You could have a planet, you could have a government, a country where the gas prices are high. That's good for the environment, and people are not getting crushed because we had switched our society to awesome electric public transportation or all of that kind of shit. I've said many times I want to power the entire country by giving everyone who wants one a great job on a stationary bike. Just stationary bikes hooked to the electric grid. You pay the people really well, and they get benefits and everything. Oh, man. So not only are they fit because they're on the electric bike all day long. I mean, stationary bike. Let's say electric bike, not stationary bike. But they also have great dental work because they have dental care and like great perks and shit. So they power the country. And so, it solves it solves climate change, the oil problems, gas problems, pollution, obesity epidemic, and the jobs problem all in one solved. Millions. I'm talking millions of people. I'm talking like 20 million people on bikes every day, just having a good time. Could sit there in their apartment with a margarita in one hand, biking in the other. Why not? Anyway. One thing that boosted prices, then he says supermarket. She says supermarket as well. Vegetables, bread, all the essentials, they've all gone up in price, as you guys well know. I'm sure many of you are facing this shit. And you're saying, where is our so-called government? Where is our so-called leaders? What are they doing with their time? They're probably drinking that margarita, just not on a stationary bike. But they're doing shit. They're just looking for new ways to rape and pillage the world. But anyway, so I know many of you are struggling or having a hard time because of these prices. The article says one thing that boosted prices is the sanctions on Russia. We all know that. They backfired and are now crushing the economies of Europe and the U.S. I mean, how fucking dumb do you have to be to help create a proxy war in Ukraine against Russia, then use sanctions that fucking fire back in your own face? Just, the level of idiocy. It's just breathtaking. I mean, if you're not involved in it, if I didn't live in this country, if it wasn't impacting so many millions, if not billions of people, then I'd sit back and go, it's kind of beautiful. That level of idiocy. That level of fucking stupidity, kind of enjoyable. It's like watching like a nice sunset or something. You just kind of like, wow, that's breathtaking. That's a breathtaking level of greed and hubris and idiocy. The sanctions backfiring and just destroying our own country. The article continues. It turns out you can't sanction an economy as huge as Russia that provides so many essential commodities without shooting yourself in the head. This stinks for the average Westerner who will probably blame incumbents at the polls. As prices for everything skyrocket, right-wingers deflect the true cause onto supposedly free-spending liberals. Yes, that's the problem, right? It was just the free-spending liberals. Because you notice Joe Biden has spent so much money on the average people. Haven't you noticed that? That's why the prices went up. Because Joe Biden and these fucking dumpster fire liberals have just done so much to help people. Because you notice how he canceled all student debt, he canceled all medical debt, got rid of the cash bail system and forgave all the people that were facing that injustice. They fully funded all the public schools that are struggling. They fully funded the postal service, got that out of debt, and just everything's going great because the liberals have put so much money into doing all that, right? Right? Hello? Hello? This thing on? Oh, that's right. They didn't do any of that. I just slipped my mind. That's right. Biden and the liberals are the same as the fucking Republicans, and they don't give a shit about social spending. They don't want to help you. They don't want to help any of us. Their job is to extract the resources, which includes the life forces of us, of workers. See, that's one side of it we don't think about, right? That's another layer of reality. I like to talk about different layers of reality. That's another layer of reality. People say they extract the resources, right? And we ship them overseas and we enrich a tiny number of individuals, tiny number of shitheads. What they don't like to mention is when they say they extract the resources, that's us. That's us too. That's our fucking life forces. That's everybody working a job they don't like, working a job they're meh about. If you're meh about your job, then that's you. It's all of us fucking struggling. Our life forces are being extracted for these goons, for these parasites to rob us. The article continues. He's talking about Republicans blaming or right-wingers blaming free spending liberals. And she says, this is catchy, clever, and false. Because if it's spending we're talking about, the elephant in the room is bipartisan, the military. $1 trillion a year. A number so immense you can't even begin to think about what it means. Go ahead, try. You'll fail. Go ahead. Think about the number of trillion percent. And I'll give you a second. Here, go ahead. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, you just failed. You just failed to actually think about how much a trillion is. You tried, as I've tried, but it's impossible. So whatever you just did in your attempt to think about a trillion, you failed. Okay? If you make $40,000 a year, it would take you know how long it takes to make $1 trillion? If you make 40,000, which is like the average in America, to make $1 trillion, it would take you 25 million years. 25 million years. That's longer than fucking Barbara Walters has been around. The real problem is that prices surge because corporations raise them. That's called gouging. So we're being gouged right now. But Biden won't call this outrage what it is. Instead, we get mealy-mouthed excuses about lockdowns and transparent falsehoods about Putin's price hike. Yeah, this is Putin's fault. We created a proxy war, and now we're blaming him because our fucking sanctions shot back into our face like a warm piss into the wind, spraying back into our faces, and then we're blaming Putin. Our own all-American companies rob us, and they call it inflation. That's the word. And as this article said, that word is a trick. Inflation seems beyond anyone's control. It appears as practically a force of nature, right? I mean, and she's totally right. Like, you hear inflation, and until I started studying this stuff, I think the average American, you think like, oh, that's just a thing that happens. It's no one can stop it. No one can help deal with it. No, inflation just happens to you. It's just a thing that happens to you, and you don't know why. It's like getting cold on a winter day or chlamydia. These things just happen to you. You don't know why. You don't know what led to them, right? Inflation just happens to you. It's just a thing that catches you by surprise, and you're like, ah, shit, I got inflated. It seems beyond anyone's control, but it's not. And price controls would prove it. We had them before, and they worked pretty well while they were in place. And then, of course, there's the fact that it's just part of the fact that capitalism fucking sucks. So this article doesn't get into that, but you want to get to a deeper level of reality. Inflation and this boom-bust cycle that averages every 7 years. On average, capitalism essentially near collapses every 7 years. And we put all this fucking duct tape and everybody goes, trying to push against it, holding it up. People sticking their used chewing gum on there and just everybody, come on, folks, get in here. Just whatever you got, anything sticky that goes there. I don't care what you got to use. If you've got something sticky, you put it there, and it's going to hold capitalism together. That's basically how it works every 7 years. But so this is inflation is the fucking another harm, another flaw, another catastrophe that is inherent in capitalism. Anyway, and she gives a great example. She says a year ago. Well, hold on. Let me read this. Those slightly better off middle class people who like to own rather than rent are abandoning their dream of owning homes because home prices are blasting through the roof. This started a while back, a year ago. Ketchum in Idaho, where many home prices soared past $1 million. Ketchum, Idaho was in a quandary about how to accommodate its nurses, firefighters, and teachers. Ketchum, Idaho, a city I've never heard of, has home prices over $1 million. How could Ketchum, Idaho have home prices over $1 million? You would assume that Ketchum, Idaho is a place people don't stop in intentionally, okay? You would assume that most people living in Ketchum, Idaho, it's like their car broke down and they couldn't find someone to fix it. I mean, it's named Ketchum. The only people living there are people kidnapped who were trying to get through and they got grabbed by other Idahoans and they were yelling, Ketchum, Ketchum! So Ketchum, Idaho, house prices go for $1 million and the city doesn't know how to house all the people they're bringing in to try and help their citizens, nurses, firefighters, teachers. So the mayor, this is a year ago, the mayor, hold on, please pause for sip of mystery juice. So the mayor a year ago, Neil Bradshaw, proposed building a tent city for these workers in Rotary Park. The town needed their services of these individuals, nurses, firefighters, teachers, but was unwilling to house its serfs in anything other than canvas. How fucking brutal is that sentence? How brutal is that reality? But then how brutally well-written is that sentence? A city in the middle of godforsaken Idaho needs firefighters and isn't willing to do anything for them other than give them a burlap sack they can hold over their heads, other than a little piece of canvas tied to a stake. Here you go. Come rescue our lives from fires, but we're not going to make it possible for you to live here. Is that not, like, honestly, does anyone need a better example of capitalism being fucking done? These are the end times of capitalism. When every house is over $1 million fucking dollars, and yet firefighters that they bring into the city that they want there. It wasn't like there was a glut of firefighters. It wasn't like Ketchum, Idaho was like, for fuck's sake, we got 10,000 firefighters all showed up to live here. And we don't even have that many fires. Shit. What are we going to do with all these firefighters? That's not what happened. It was not like some sort of accidental firefighter convention that just took over Ketchum, Idaho. They asked these people to come. They needed their help, but they're unwilling to step in and change what capitalism has done. What unfettered, screw your neighbor capitalism has done to these people. So they said, here's a tent city in the middle of a park. Anyway, wrapping this up in 1 second, but not surprisingly, He's talking about the baby formula shortage, and then she says, not surprisingly, babies get to starve first because the U.S. doesn't seem to give a damn about babies except before they're born. There's the famous George Carlin line, right? Pre-born, they only care about you when you're pre-born. Pre-born, you're doing great. Preschool, you're fucked. That's the Carlin line. As many have observed, elderly people have Social Security and Medicare, but babies have empty bottles and bare supermarket shelves where infant formula should be. Anyway, you can check out this article if you want to read the rest of it. It's by Eve Ottenberg. It's at Counterpunch, and it's called Biden and Inflation. And I just felt I haven't gotten that deep into inflation in recent videos, so I thought that I should talk about it here and talk about how what it is just straight up pillaging. It's straight up corporate pillaging. And Biden, of course, and all of the Democrats and all of the Republicans can't use that terminology because they don't want you to realize this is what's going on. And this is what's going on by the people that fund their campaigns, by the people that own our fucking government. All right. Biden knows it's pillaging because he can ask the corporate CEO with his hand up Biden's ass. Okay. Do you understand how easy it's got to be for him to ask that guy, hey, you pillaging America? The guy has his hand up his ass. That's how close Biden is with this guy. All he's got to do is just turn his head and say, hey, this inflation thing is pillaging, right? Like, that's all it would take because the guy is always there and he's always got his hand up his ass. And yet Biden can't do that. That's all it would take. He's right there. He's standing there. Hand up the ass. That is as close as you can be to someone. That is as close as you can be to someone is when they're elbow deep in your ass. Okay? So Biden, it's not like Biden can't find these people. It's not like they're not returning his phone calls. They're in his ass. See what I'm saying? All right. I want to do one more story before the jump, as we call it. After this next story, the rest of this live stream will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp, rumble.com/Lee Camp, where it's free to subscribe and free to watch, and it will continue over there. But anyway, before I get to that, let's talk about the fact that half of America is not unable to go outside right now. I never thought I'd say that sentence. I never thought, as fucked as I knew this was getting and our world is getting, I never thought I'd say the sentence, half of America has been told not to go outside. Except maybe in the case of a nuclear meltdown. Maybe in the case of a nuclear meltdown, you might be somewhere in that area. But, okay, it's not, I'm barely exaggerating. It's not a half of the U.S. It's slightly over a third of the U.S. But this is from The Guardian, which, by the way, before I show this to you, Guardian is a trash outlet. So do not go to The Guardian anymore. They have been captured up until about 2014. They had some really good shit. They would do stuff that was anti-big oil. They would really revealing the truth about the world. But now they're essentially, U.S. and U.K. State Department talking point, State Department outlet, just a bullhorn for just the worst type of neoliberal empire. And they just put out an article the other day trashing Aaron Mate and other great journalists. So that shows you who they are. But I know for a fact that this article is telling the truth. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one just to show you it's even in the mainstream media, but not much. Not enough for the amount we should be talking about this. Over a third of U.S. population has been urged to stay indoors amid a record-breaking heat wave. And that's saying a lot considering we break the record every year. Every fucking year they go, oh, this is one for the history books. No, it's not. The history books are not going to write about this year because every year is going to be hotter. It amazes me how pathetic our so-called leaders, how pathetic our so-called media can be on the topic of climate catastrophe. Because it's not like they don't know what's happening. They'll write an article like this, and they see articles like this, and yet turn on fucking CNN, turn on Fox News, turn on MSNBC. See how much time they devote to the fact that a third of America can't go outside. More than 120 million people under heat alerts as record high temperatures set throughout. So yeah, over 100 million Americans have been advised to stay indoors amid record-breaking heat, with experts warning that such temperatures could become the norm amid the climate crisis. Not going outside could be the norm. Think about that sentence for a minute. Not going outside could be the norm. I'm just going to keep saying that sentence over and over again. Not going outside your fucking isolation chamber where you can survive is becoming the norm. And that's an insult to people named Norm. I'm sorry that you guys got roped into this. But, I mean, it's tough to, there's no exaggeration that could be said to follow this. There's not, and here's the thing. Imagine if this were anything other than the climate crisis, the climate catastrophe that our ruling elite have decided to ignore because it would get in the way, because addressing it would get in the way of their fucking wealth, of their fucking profit. That's why they're ignoring it. And our ruling elite, guess what? They rule things, okay? And this is a large problem. So it needs large systemic change. And that has to come from people with the power to create large systemic change. But they are all very rich, and they are all getting wealthier by the status quo. And the status quo is driving us off a cliff. And so they are doing nothing. They are not working on this problem. They are not. You know what Biden's solution? First of all, Biden, during his campaign, basically never mentioned climate change until he was harassed at campaign stop after campaign stop by people dressed like penguins. I'm not kidding. Telling him that he had to address climate change. And then finally, with a front row full of fucking penguin people, Biden goes, no one's done more to deal with climate change than me. Bullshit, you lying sack of bullshit. He's done nothing to deal with climate change, deal with climate crisis. And his view of doing something during his campaign, if he's actually done this, which he has not, but if he had actually done it, he said he was going to put 500,000 charging stations around the country. Okay, that'd be wonderful if you also made oil illegal at the same time. But putting 500,000 charging stations around the country doesn't help unless you help people get electric cars, produce the electric cars, find a way to produce the electric cars that isn't just fucking atrocious to the world and the environment, and find a way to get all that electricity that's going to power those cars, not from coal and oil and gas. You have to do all those things for that to matter even a bit. But he's not doing any of it. He's not even putting in those charging stations, which were bullshit to begin with. But imagine if this third of America wasn't able to go outside. And by the way, folks, in the comment thread, please, if you're one of the people in one of these areas, just say so in the comment thread. Just say where you are and that you're in this situation. I'm not saying you haven't stepped outside, but I'm saying if your area is telling you it's best not to go outside right now, then please put it in the comment thread. Let people know where you live and where this is happening. Obviously, it's mostly Western U.S., Western and Southern U.S., but that's not exclusively there. But imagine if this weren't climate change, weren't climate crisis, weren't something that is powered by the use of oil and gas and coal, which make people tons of money. Imagine if this was a third of Americans couldn't go outside because of a Jell-O flood. Some company had just, all their Jell-O had gotten out of the factory and just oozed across the United States. Do you think we deal with it? Do you think it'd be every story on the fucking news? Don't step outside, you might drown in Jell-O. There's 7 feet of Jell-O outside. Yes, it would be every story on the news. And do you have any idea how fast our government would, first of all, ban Jell-O, ban that company, unless that company owned Congress, which would be rare for a Jell-O company, I think, to do that. And use the entirety of the U.S. fucking military FEMA forces to clean up the Jell-O that's drowning everyone. It would be all we were talking about. It would be everything. Everything. But instead, here, we've got a heat wave that's killing people, killing the environment, killing animals. Tens of thousands of cattle have collapsed because it's so hot. And they're doing nothing. Our ruling elite are doing nothing because they're getting rich from the status quo. So it does not benefit them to do shit. It's just unbelievable. And I don't know that we're going to see change on this front until the petrodollar collapses. You have to get off. The dollar is backed by oil. Without oil, the U.S. dollar either collapses or loses a ton of its value. So unless we switch what the U.S. dollar is backed by, or we just accept that the U.S. dollar needs to collapse for this to happen, those are your options. As long as the petrodollar is there, you have the most powerful military in the fucking world times 10 defending oil usage, defending fucking petroleum, defending climate catastrophe, pushing us further because we need the dollar to have all that nice value. That's what we want. And this is, honestly, this is barely ever talked about. I'm not going to act like I'm the first to talk about it, but this is barely ever talked about. Even by your online talking heads, your YouTube talking heads, your YouTube brains. Even the climate change talked about a little bit. Petrodollar occasionally. But the fact that we're not going to see action on climate change without getting off the petrodollar, without the petrodollar ending, I barely ever hear it talked about. I mean, can't we back here? Look, we can keep having our empire. Can't we just back the dollar with something else? Just fucking, what did I say the other day? Just make it Monster Energy drink backed. Or fucking Ed Hardy t-shirts is backed dollar. Just do that. Instead of petroleum, the most dangerous substance in the world. Record high temperatures were set throughout the U.S., particularly in the Southwest, prompting cities to try to find ways to cope with potentially lethal heat. In Las Vegas, Nevada, temperatures reached a high of 109 Fahrenheit, 43 Celsius, tying a record set in 1956. In Denver, Colorado, temperatures passed 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius, tying records set in 2013 for the highest temperature in the earliest day to reach 100 Fahrenheit. In Phoenix, Arizona, where residents increasingly struggle to cope with sweltering heat, temperatures reached 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 43 Celsius, for 4 consecutive days. In that spell, nighttime temperatures never dipped below 80. Chicago, where 3 women died during the heat wave last month, opened cooling centers throughout much of the city as temperatures reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I'm not saying don't open cooling centers if that saves a couple people's lives, but cooling centers is not how we deal with this. And imagine if Chicago, all of Chicago, I mean all of the politicians, all of the talking heads, all of the Chicago celebrities, all of the people that people listen to. Imagine if everyone in Chicago did nothing but talk about how we're fucked and the planet is on fire. That would create, even if it was just Chicago, that would create change. That would create a large-scale movement. But instead, Chicago opened cooling centers. They have a lady with a spritz gun. She's going to spritz you. If you just walk by, it's about 3 miles straight, and then take a right and go 1 more mile, and there's a lady there with a spritzer, and she can just and she'll spritz you, and it just feels oh so good. It's just nice, cool spritz in the face. Just oh so good. It's you only get 6 spritzes though. You get 6 per person. Okay, so when you get there, don't be greedy. You enjoy your 6 spritzes and you move along. Okay, move along to the next cooling center, which is just 5 miles from there, and you get 6 more spritzes. And I think we have this climate crisis thing tackled. I think we do because we got those spritzes going on. But it is filled with, I did say it's ice cold, but it is filled with urine. It's the urine of the ruling elite. So you just get a nice, cool spritz of the ruling elite urine in your face. Scientists have repeatedly warned that recurring and intense heat waves could become the norm as the climate crisis intensifies. Yeah, scientists have. Meteorologists still have their heads up their goddamn asses. Honestly, turn on your local meteorologist report. See how much they say the word climate change. Some of them have begun maybe saying it once in a broadcast, but I think even that is rare. And the number of times that I hear, like I'll be in like a Lyft or something, someone's car, and they'll have on the local news, and in an Uber or a taxi or whatever, and they'll have on the local news, and they act like it's like a fun thing. Like I remember it was December in Washington, D.C., and it was like 80 degrees out. And the guy on the weather report on the news, on the radio goes, it's 80 degrees out there, folks. December feels more like September. Remember to put your bathing suit on. They still think it's funny because they know people are going to turn the channel if they tell them the truth. That's what it comes down to. It just comes down to like how much can they get you to listen? Are you going to turn the channel? And the bad news makes you turn the channel. So they're not going to tell you that. They don't want to tell you the reality that we're fucking up against. And that we're fucking up against. Both of those are true. Other symptoms of increasing temperatures, including wildfires and extreme flooding, have occurred in recent weeks. Wildfires predicted to increase by a third by 2050 have erupted across southwestern states, according to the National Interagency Fire Center. More than 2.5 million acres of land has burned this year, more than double the total last year. And don't expect the firefighters in Ketchum, Idaho to save you, because their tents will go up like matchsticks. Fire hits Ketchum, Idaho, and those tents are up in seconds. And now there's no more firefighters to take care of you. It's just unbelievable. These are compounding climate catastrophe crises, and you barely get news about it. You barely, honestly, like, I'm not saying it's never covered. I'm saying it needs to be wall to wall. And they need to be yelling like I am. They need to be as loud. The decibel level needs to be equivalent to mine, okay? And if there's anyone out of there, I'm not looking at the comments, but if there's any you lovely commenters going, yeah, there's actually been climate changes many times throughout the Earth's history. Have you ever looked at how long those climate changes took? Fucking 100,000 years minimum, maybe 1,000,000 years. We're going through something equivalent in 20 years. Do you get it? Do you see? Okay. And many times throughout the Earth's history, there have been climate changes. They just took 1,000,000 years to happen, and the animals had time to adjust. But nowadays, we have 20 years, and I plan to stay indoors. Everybody just stay inside forever. Man, do I hope the metaverse kicks into gear, because soon we're all not going to be allowed out of our houses. We're just going to have to live in the metaverse, because you step outside, you're on fire. How bad does it have to get? If it were a plague of locusts that were flesh-eating locusts that were eating people's bodies, and a third of the country was told to stay indoors, do you think that'd be a 24/7 news cycle? Do you think? If a third of America was told to stay inside and these locusts are going to eat your face off, do you think we might get a little more news coverage? Do you think our government might have something to say about it that actually mattered at all? All right, folks, I got to go over to rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you're already over there, then you got nothing to worry about. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, Rockfin, then please head over to rumble.com/Lee Camp to see the rest of this live stream because I'd love for you to join me there. Click subscribe. Also, if you feel like you've got $1 worth of content out of this, please become a member at leecamp.net, which will forward you to my locals page. And that's how I'm able to make these. That's how I'm going to be able to make these with no ads. That's why I'm not telling you to go buy jockey underwear or some shit, is because I'm able to do it because you guys support the show and make it possible at leecamp.net. I'm the most censored comedian in America. Had over 1,000 videos deleted by YouTube. And I rely on you all to keep going. So leecamp.net, if you want to see broadcasts like this, which are now every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday at noon Eastern.